I think it was a good idea to have sex before the podcast.
Yeah, I think so.
That's all you got for me?
I agree. Yeah, that's all I got.
You're listening to the Fight for Together podcast.
All right, pour some Moscato or something. I think, man, tough audience tonight.
I'm not feeling very good.
Oh, yeah. You want to talk about that?
I just have a cold. It's not like a super bad cold, but just annoying enough.
All right. Well, if you can wait out there in podcast listening land while we cut our cigars and pour our beverages. Here's the deal. Not that I need to justify myself, but I feel like I've listened to other podcasts, and I want to admit that you're getting a subpar product. Like, we're not as highly produced as we could be or organized. So if you're looking for data per minute, this isn't your podcast. Because here's the thing. I feel like we're pretty maxed out. And I'm committed to this podcast experiment. Like, I want to learn it. And I feel like we're adding value to the world, I hope. I'm assuming that's why people are listening. But it comes with this, like, we've got to do it this one way right now. Otherwise, we just don't have the energy to do it. And that one way is, it's like at the end of our date night. It's 10 p.m. on a Wednesday night. I haven't spent like much time preparing or organizing the topic. In fact, when we were out on date night, I was just like, "Hey, Cammie, what do you want to talk about?" She was like, "I don't know."
Oh, I think
And I
cut
said-
that too short.
And I said, "Well, I have this one idea." And we're like, "Okay, great. Let's talk about that." So if that floats your boat, I'm glad you're here. Hang on.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here too. So you're kind of getting scraps, but at least you're getting something if you want it.
You're getting Cammie's sloppy seconds because she already smoked a cigar today.
Yeah, I did. Sitting out on my porch in the sun, reading. It's my happy place.
So if you're wondering out there in video podcast land, maybe you don't recognize me, but this is, in fact, your host, Ben Crawford. But I'm wearing a new sweater, sweatshirt, hoodie thing. And you might be thinking, oh, wait, is that still Ben? Because normally he wears plaid or his Filson jacket. And it's a new purchase. I hope to have it for the next 20 years, so don't worry.
Is Cammie with a new man? What? Because I'm definitely wearing the same thing.
So, you know, I don't want to do this to you often, like freak you out like this. But
We realize stability is important.
yeah, stability is not our thing, but with clothes, actually, it is.
And if they've watched our vlog long enough, they know.
Okay, well, Cammie's lighting up. Let's go to the comment board from last week and just take a look at a few of these nifty comments that we really appreciate that people leave on the YouTube. Okay, BB Mama says, oh, looking forward to your thoughts on Abducted in Plain Sight next week. So last week, was it last week?
Yeah, we watched that. Oh, that was disturbing. Not surprising, but
So
still
not surprising.
Still disturbing.
So not surprising.
Especially in a religious, like highly, highly religious environment.
So I read this book years ago, maybe a decade ago, maybe more than that. It's called Under the Banner of Heaven by John Krakauer. John Krakauer is one of my favorite authors. Some of you might recognize his name from such titles as Into the Wild, which got turned into a movie. Or he wrote Into Thin Air, which is my favorite, like, Everest book.
That's very specific.
Well,
My favorite Everest book.
I've read quite a few Everest books. He's kind of a climbing nerd. But anyhow, he wrote this book called Under the Banner of Heaven a decade ago. and the I don't know whether it was the subtitle. I think it was on the original cover or was like on the back of the book. But it basically said like 2 guys murdered this
woman and her baby
in their crib while they were sleeping, and they said God told them to. Okay, that's not that interesting. That stuff happens all the time. Like, people murder and do wacky shit. Yeah. But then what it said is, this book is about what led up to that to make it make sense, basically. Like, why it wasn't that weird for them to do it, given where they came from. And this is totally paraphrased. I'm slaughtering this. This is from 12 years ago, memory. But basically, it's the history of the LDS Church, and like basically this cult-like. I wouldn't have always, if I would have said that before, it would have been like more derogatory. Like, coming from a Christian background, we called like Mormons cult, like, just because we saw them as less than Christian. But now I can say with more confidence from an academic perspective that it is cult-like.
And there's different streams of it, just like in Christianity. I think there's different streams of cultish activity. Like, there's fundamentalist Mormonism.
But the cult-likeness is this, there's this high emphasis on submission to authority. The problem is they never tell you like who the authority is. So for younger people, they think anyone older than them is an authority that they ought to submit to.
It's ambiguous.
And there's very little like free thought. Like, you're almost taught, you're disincentivized for thinking for yourself. And by the way, I would consider a lot of what we have been involved in to be very cult-like, non-LDS related. But it wasn't, it like basically if you stood out, it's almost like Asian culture where if you stood out, you got hammered down.
Or expelled, which I guess is hammered down.
Yeah. Okay, so all that to say, this is a Netflix documentary called Abducted in Plain Sight, and it was about this LDS family that basically did these crazy things. They let this molester basically take over their family, and I'm not shocked at all because of that background, unfortunately.
Everyone was trained to be nice and friendly, and if you weren't nice and friendly, there was something wrong with you. So any red flags you would immediately silence because you needed to be nice and friendly. You need to be this certain type of person.
And I think I'm still on this high from this. What are the 2 documentaries you watched recently? We watched the Michael Jackson one, which that is still kind of blowing my mind. And that makes like that Netflix one seem like kind of small potatoes to me.
In a way. I mean, what's interesting, they're both interesting in their own right, because the Michael Jackson one is like high profile, and then it's not the
high profile that makes it interesting to me. It's the level through which it goes into detail about the grooming process.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, like, it could be anyone.
Yeah. And then the Abducted in Plain Sight was interesting to me because it had religious roots to it.
Yeah, that one was kind of weird. I'm more excited. My Netflix this week, my Netflix goal is Darren Brown. He's this UK magician, and he like totally does this mind control shit that's just like fucking nut job.
It's like social experiments.
Yeah, I was watching him 10 years ago, and I could not get enough of him. And then I just recently found out that he's like back on Netflix or something like that. Anyways, we'll keep you updated on that. Next comment is, whoa.
I'll read this one.
Yeah.
That's really
please
small,
do.
though.
Hang on, I'll make it bigger. By the way, I'm glad to be here with you tonight, Cammie.
Me too.
I was feeling pretty low energy.
I could tell.
Before our bedroom romp. I don't know what it was. And now I'm smoking a cigar, drinking a beverage, looking into your eyes.
Sex, podcast. Woo.
Date night. Wait, hang on. Can I get a little...
Yeah. Clappy clap.
Yeah, let me see how to
Make
do
sure
this.
It's not a booey boo.
I know. That one here? This one will work.
We need to hire someone just to do these.
I feel like we could use a little bit of cheering, but I don't have that sound effect.
Okay. Plant-based large family says, question for you on school. You are all about doing hard things as a family. wouldn't school fall into that category? I know when you gave Philia the option of school, she chose it in her own time and got excited for it. That's great, but when it gets difficult, what then? I know you've just started this no rules thing, so maybe you don't know, but thoughts? Okay. Well, yeah, that's a big one. To us, it actually goes way back, way before.
We've done it.
Well, I'm just saying like us not doing school.
I think what she's saying is you're not afraid to do hard things. If school's a hard thing, why don't you do school?
We've done it.
It's
Our
like
kids have done it.
I mean, like, even when we were hiking the Appalachian Trail, like, we did it. I think a lot of people are like, oh, are you going to go do it again? And I'm like, maybe, but probably not. Like, it was a fun experiment, and it was fun to get a new perspective on life. What's weird to me about school is that it's like 12 years. And then it's not even just 12. It's 12 plus 4 and sometimes plus, like, another 4. So it's like this massive cycle of your life where at some point what you're learning, you stop learning whatever it is you're supposed to be learning. I mean, unless it's just information, but I think there's better ways to learn information. So we're not really into the school thing. Well, I'm not against it.
Yeah, she asked, wouldn't school fall into that category? And I guess for us right now, no. But other things fall into that category.
I think it's school. I would like our kids to be able to learn from school.
Yeah, and they have, like, each of especially the 3 older ones, are pursuing their own type of learning. That's been difficult for them because a lot of it's been difficult because it's had to be self-motivated.
But it's just as important for my kids to learn how to learn outside of school because that's more realistic with how they're going to spend the rest of their life. And school doesn't prepare you for learning outside of school. In fact, school, in my experience, like actually hate the process of learning.
Yeah, you
so that when it's like summer break and you're like, I can't wait to just veg.
Yeah,
and
I think a lot of that has to do with you don't really have a choice whether to learn or not.
Yeah. Good question, though. I mean,
that is a good question. I bet a lot of people will wonder that.
Okay, here's a fucking bomb.
Can I read this?
Yes.
Okay. David comments, I'm curious if you guys hold more of a moral relativist mindset or if you see people in every situations as still worthy and loved by God, yet still needing support on a path toward righteousness. Righteousness in a sense they admit they're a sinner and are doing their best with their situation, not righteousness as in perfection in action and word.
Dude, I don't understand that sentence. I'm sure it makes sense, but those are like a lot of big words for me right now.
Basically, do you see righteousness as a path everyone is on with an ultimate end? And regardless where you are on that path, as long as you are on it, that is what God desires from us? Or do people have different paths with different ends and standards? Your genuine approach to understanding people and loving them is something I have not come across often, but is something I greatly value. I'm new to the channel and your vlog and just trying to piece some things together. What's moral relativist?
See, this is the problem for me with answering this question. And by the way, I appreciate this question. But it's really hard to answer.
Yeah.
David. So thank you for asking it. But I don't know how to answer it because back in the good old days, I knew exactly what moral relativism was. And it was people that didn't believe in absolute truth the way that I understood absolute truth. And there was only one absolute truth.
You held the market, or we felt like our brand held the market on that. Yeah.
And that was a really nice feeling, a nice place to be. Unfortunately, I'm not there anymore. Well, I say unfortunately tongue-in-cheek because I'm actually very happy to not be there anymore. But I also don't see myself as a moral relativist, but I would have seen myself as a moral relativist. Like, I believe like love, God loving us and us loving people is like super important. Yeah. The most important. Okay. So there's no relativity about that. Now, if we're to ask, what does that look like? Can you be gay in love, or can you cheat on your taxes in love, or can you follow rules in love? I would say what that looks like is not, I don't have the confidence I used to have in describing certain behaviors.
To me, it's not really a path anymore. It's just presence. Like being able to be present with God, getting rid of your mind, getting in the way, and all these like fears and stuff. To me, like the whole path things, I think that's a trigger word for me to there's one way, one truth. Boom. Yeah, here it is. I don't know. Yeah, I don't see God as caring about the path as much as just caring about like being one with us. Did I lose you?
You lost me.
Oh, okay.
Well, because you're just on your... I hear Cammie talk about this all day, every day. It's her like power of now mantra stuff. And I'm really glad that she's into it. I started to zone out.
Yeah, it's...
I mean, it was good sex. It wasn't that good for me to be able to listen for that long.
Where's the boo right now?
Well,
Come
there's
on.
no boo.
Oh, there's a boo.
Not for something like that. I mean, I guess it's your choice, but...
No, it's okay. It's cool. You can...
Okay, I think it's time to move on to our topic now.
Yep.
The topic today, as you saw from the title, is something I'm calling the black sheep syndrome.
Which you have a tattoo
Of
on
a
your
black sheep
thigh
on my thigh.
of a black sheep.
Should I show it to him?
And you got it this last year.
Yeah, I'll have to pull my pants down. So I'm not going to do it right now. But
sorry, you guys are going to have to wait.
You can envision that. So I don't know how to start off with this because we're a little disorganized, but I'll tell some stories. Growing up, we went to this Bible camp, and I don't know if I describe it as conservative. I don't even know what to call conservative anymore, because I came to find out everything on West Coast doesn't seem as conservative as Bible Belt, but it felt conservative to us. So
I think conservatism is probably on a spectrum.
yeah. But it was okay, it was Bible based. There was like no two-piece swimsuits allowed. No bad language. No kissing unless you're married. No alcohol, no tobacco. I mean, it was just like what I consider a good, typical good people camp. So this was like one of the formative environments for me growing up. And I'm really thankful for this place because I formed a lot of relationships where we met, Cammie and I.
Yeah.
It was like the highlight of my summer was to go to this place.
A beautiful place on a lake on Whidbey Island in Washington State.
A lot of memories there.
Yeah.
And growing up, there was these families. Like, we'd go to family camp, and there'd be like, let's just say 20 families that we knew. And of these 20 families, there's probably like 4 families that had a kid that was like the bad kid.
Yeah.
They were like the rule breaker, and they were either like smoking pot or making out. I mean, I didn't even think having sex was like an option back then. So
they never fit in either.
Yeah. And like everyone kind of knew who these kids were. You know, they were some of them wore leather jackets and had tattoos, and this word wasn't used, but this idea was very much used. Heck, maybe the word was used. They were the black sheep. They were the ones that didn't have their shit together, weren't following the rules, didn't fit in, and were seen as rebellious and seen as less than. I mean, that once again, that phrase wasn't used, but there was this other lingo that was used that was like, oh, we'll pray for that person. God loves that person too. Now I've come to find out it's very condescending language, but at the time I just like bought into it, and I was like, wow, who are these black sheep?
And not all of them, but a lot of them phased out of camp early.
Yes, these people did not last in this environment. And for me, I was able to play that game for much longer. I fit into this camp environment, I would say, into my 20s before I started to get like pushed out
you started, I think, evolving your ideas, your beliefs, and your personality is like not, you don't hide that shit.
And playing blackjack professionally doesn't help.
Yeah. Which that started at age 23 for you.
Having women with their tattooed on your arm with their asses hanging out didn't help.
But you called it a vice.
I had a couple things going against me. Identifying as a sexaholic didn't help. But I was always, around this time period, I started to get really fascinated with rethinking about these stories now of these people who used to be a slam dunk to me. I was like, oh, I know who you are. You're a rebel. You don't fit in.
And you're trying, like, there was this feeling or thought or belief that those kids were trying not to fit in. I guess that's the rebellious part of it.
Well, it's almost like their whole thing was sticking the middle finger to the man.
Right. When maybe they were just being
But it wasn't the man, because the man is this corporate thing. This was like God and godly living. So the consequences were much higher. Like if purity or holiness or righteousness was better, and if these people are sticking the middle finger to that, then they have it coming to them in this life or the next. That's what I believed. Like, oh, your life is going to be harder. Fine. Yeah. Do drugs. You're going to end up without a job.
And we believed purity, holiness, it all looks this way. Like, you got to follow these rules. And God says that too, by the way, is what we believed.
So somewhere along the way, I started to become fascinated with this type of person that didn't make it at camp. And I guess I should say they didn't make it at camp, but they also often didn't make it at church, and they also didn't make it within some of these families, specifically that worked at churches or camp. Because when you work at a church or when you work at a camp, these jobs, they kind of take over your entire life. Like being a pastor, it's not just a hat you put on and then you can take off. Like when people come over to your house from your church, they're like checking out everything about what you do, what kind of music you listen to, what kind of beverages you drink.
And everything's heightened too, because your reputation is really important, even more important than just the like person that just attends the church or is a member at the church.
And I guess we should, full disclosure here. I made this sound like it's some deep confession, but Cammie's dad is a pastor.
Yeah.
So you had a very inside view into ministry life of like what it looked like to have a professional church person.
Yeah, the pressure was really intense for my parents and for us as kids to look a certain way, act a certain way.
So calling these people black sheep or referring to them by anything that resembles a black sheep just made sense because it's so simple. It says like, okay, here's the flock. We're all white sheep. You don't fit in. That's your fault. It's your problem. The impetus is on you. You're broken. These are kind of the implications. And hopefully someday you learn to fit in. Otherwise, like the show goes on and you're not going to be a part of it. Now, like I said, this wasn't like said, but this is all reading between the lines. This was the net result of it. And now I look at that and I think that whole thing, one, is optional. And I'm going to explain how I think it's optional. Two, I think it's really, really tragic and important. And I don't think you have to be religious to be implicating these types of behaviors. And the reason why it's so important, whether or not you're in a church or not, because how we define our family and black sheep or outsiders or insiders within our family is one of the biggest definitions I think we can ever come up with.
Mm-hmm. I think it's conditional love. So even the kids that are quote unquote white sheep know that if they start looking black sheepish, then they're going to lose something really valuable. They're going to lose love or standing in the family. They're going to get treated like their sibling did.
So there was a family, a well-known family at this camp, who had a kid that was one of these black sheep. And by the way, there was like 3 or 4 other kids that were like the complete opposite, right? I mean, they were like the super good kids. So it was obvious then that, okay, their parenting works. I mean, this is once again what we told ourselves. And this one kid is just rejecting all the goodwill that's being offered to him, sticking the middle finger up, and leaving the flock because they prefer free will, destruction, and partying. That's the tale that's told. Mm-hmm. Well, the older I got, and as I heard more parts of the story that came out actually after this particular child, who was now an adult with children, committed suicide, mm-hmm. that there's a whole nother side to this story. And that a lot of what we saw as these like absolute morality issues, come to find out, one, weren't absolute moral issues. You know, like let's take smoking pot. I mean, 30 years ago, that was like huge no. I mean, people would be like, oh, it's illegal and it rots your brain and all these things. Okay, well, in Seattle, where this camp is, basically, Seattle area, smoking pot's the new like
trend
rap music. You know, it's like, yeah, it's just like you can buy it anywhere. And I don't care what you think about it or not, but it doesn't have the same moral stigma inside the church or outside the church that it used to. And my guess is in another 20 years, like pastors are going to be smoking joints while giving a sermon. That's
it's going to be the hip new
exaggerated,
thing.
But
yeah.
So anyways, this guy who is identified as a black sheep, I guess let's just cut to the point in a nutshell. When our kids exhibit a behavior that is outside of our code that we think is good or healthy or right or whatever it is, we have 2 choices at that point. One is to label them as an outsider to what the group is.
Well, first you try to make them like fit in, and then when that doesn't work,
sure,
then you label them.
The second is to redefine the group.
Yeah.
And just like happened in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, you could say, hey, we're the island of, what is it, misfit toys or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, instead of being, we're a group of people that follow the rules and do good things and are pretty dang awesome. Like, we're a group that includes people that are struggling or experimenting, or you could call it failing, or choosing different choices about what they believe about drugs or God or whatever. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'll say, like, assuming that's not destructive to everyone, but in most of these stories, like a teenage kid smoking pot, I don't think it was really like destructive to the group. It was destructive to the reputation, but it's not like all the 3-year-olds then started smoking pot. I mean, that's one of the excuses that's made. Oh, like you're a bad influence on everyone. But it's like,
you're some cancer,
yeah.
or you have like leprosy, so you need to stay away.
Something that needs to be like cut out before it infects everyone. And that's actually some of the language that's used. Mm-hmm. And not only does like, well, I mean, I guess like, let's look at the ramifications of when you kick a kid out of the flock by declaring that they're a black sheep, you lose a kid. You lose a child.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Like literally with this family was suicide. They lost the child. And I think, and this is one thing that's so unfortunate to me, I wish this family at this point would have said, shit, we fucked this one up. Mm-hmm. This wasn't worth it. Whatever hill we died on with pot or rock and roll or whatever, it wasn't worth the life. This was like partially our fault. We drove this child away and made them feel like a worthless piece of shit because they didn't fit in, because we told them they didn't fit in. And we told them the circle's only this small. And we own that, and we want to change as a family. Because, talk about cancer, what's cancerous isn't the child. What's cancerous is the belief that excludes the child.
Yeah.
Shit, I lost my train of thought because I was so excited about that.
Well, I think it affects everyone, like, really negatively, that belief system. The living children, it affects them. The parents are still in this, I mean, they're in their 70s, and they're still in this, like, really small circle of inclusivity.
So then the kids that are in, they think they're in because that they follow the rules. So it's kind of a double whammy where that's like...
And they know, like, I think subconsciously or consciously, they know at any point they could stop following the rules, and then they're out.
And then they're out. And this is where Stephen Covey, is he LDS? I don't know, God bless him, wrote this book called 7 Highly Effective Habits of Families, I think. And in this book, not to be confused with 7 Highly Effective Habits of People, he said the most important child to love is the least lovable one. Mm-hmm. Because deep down, we all know that we're the least lovable in our heart of hearts. At least that's how we feel. There's a reality of, there's a part of us that's like the secret part, the ashamed, the shameful part, the out of control part.
I think there's also another thing that happens, especially with the black sheep, but it probably happens with really anyone in a religious environment like this, is they then split themselves. Half of them tries to live up to this code so that their parents will accept and love them, and then the other half of them knows they can't. And I mean, I was just reading this story in this book called Shameless of this lesbian woman who grew up in this type of religious environment, knew she liked girls, but half of her experimented with that, and the other half of her said, no, I can't do that. And so fast forward 30 years, she's like in a pile of blood trying to cut herself away because she couldn't handle the split of that.
She had been living a double life.
She was living a double life, and it was...
Because her environment...
it was killing her.
Her environment basically forced her to.
Yeah. It was
they said, we don't accept this part of you. And because she wanted to be in the group so bad... And that's what I didn't realize about the black sheep.
Well, she wanted God to love her. I mean, people told her this is who God loves.
People who are representing God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is what I didn't realize about the black sheep. That the black sheep, they wanted in bad most of the time. I mean, who doesn't want to be loved and accepted by their mom and dad? Or by their peer group?
Wants to belong. Like, everyone has an innate sense that they need to belong.
But there was something unique inside of him. And knowing this guy that committed suicide, he was like an artist. And this often happens, I think, with the artists. Like, they don't fit into the mold of the tight, moral, structured, scheduled, achiever. And oftentimes when they don't follow the rules, they're viewed as outright rebellious, both in religious context and just from a parenting perspective. We've seen this with our kids where, we'll say show up at 6 and a kid doesn't show up at 6. And we automatically think they don't care. Or you're giving me the middle finger. When in reality, like, scheduling is just not in this kid's wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it'd be nice for them to learn it. Mm-hmm. But they're not meaning it in this way. And actually this lack of focusing on schedule, it just could be as much of an asset to this child and the world and our family as it is a liability to us. But when we focus on how it doesn't fit in with what we want and we just focus on it being a liability, the kid comes to hate that part of themselves and separate themselves from the group. And then we as the family lose that artist or that asset that could actually teach us about something that we're drastically missing as a tribe, as a family, as a group, as a Bible camp. So we become like monoculture.
Yeah.
And that's what happened is we lost all these people. I feel like this happened in my family to a certain degree with my brother. I feel like it could happen with our kids. So let's go to the other option. Instead of calling someone a black sheep, we can say, wow, you don't fit in with the way we're doing things. So because you're our kid and because the rules aren't sacred, like I'm thinking about watching this basketball YouTube video I saw this week where this like disabled kid was like playing basketball, with like normal kids. And they like stopped the game so that this like disabled kid could like make a basket. And there's a part of me, and I think there's part of people that watch that and they're like, oh, what? The rules of basketball don't matter? Like you're violating the rules. Like that kid can't play basketball. And it's like, yeah, okay. So they broke the rules. But what's the point of the rules of basketball? The rules of basketball are completely arbitrary. Yeah. Some dudes made them up 100 years ago so that humans could have fun, feel valued, and find order.
Yeah.
But it's like, who decides that you get to dribble the ball with one hand or not stop dribbling or shoot it from this certain line that's 18 feet back or whatever it is? It's all made up. So as a family, it's easy to hold these rules as sacred. Thou shalt not smoke pot. Yep, that's a firm one. But of course, 20 years ago it wasn't, and 20 years from now it won't be. So it's fucking make-believe. So if we have a kid that smokes pot, we could say, okay, you're out. You don't belong here. You're an outsider now. Or we have an incredible opportunity to reevaluate the fucking rules and to ask, is this really that important? Is this the hill I'm going to die on to lose a relationship and possibly in this family story, a kid's life? How important are these rules? What are these rules for?
Yeah. To make God happy.
Well, I mean, this is where, there's this... I actually find the teachings and saying of Jesus quite inspirational in this matter because he was no stranger to pissing people off with rules. And you have these 10 commandments, which Christians hold as like the ultimate authority on all things. And most Christians don't follow them. I mean, they follow some of them, but there's some that they're very comfortable tossing out, like Sabbath. It's one of the 10 commandments. I think it's like the 3rd or 7th or something. Observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy, which is a day of rest. And the Jews take that shit super seriously. Like if you're in Jerusalem and you're driving a car down the street, like, you remember when I was in Jerusalem and I'm like flying this drone and I was so nervous.
Muslim guy came up to you, right?
I don't know who it was, but someone was like, there was these crazy fuckers that were going to be throwing rocks at my drone and taking it out because I was flying it on
Watch out,
Saturday because I was getting this bomb-ass footage of Jerusalem. And
they're like, we're not stopping this basketball game for you.
Yeah. Where were we? Sabbath. Okay. But then Jesus comes along. So this is a 10 commandment, okay? Etched in stone by Moses or something. And he says, man is not here for Sabbath, but Sabbath is here for man. Basically saying, you don't serve the rule. A rule that's been embedded since the absolute creation story in Genesis 1, 2, and 3 that Christians and Jews and I think even Muslims like hold to. But these rules are actually here for you to fulfill the first 2 commandments, which Jesus quoted again and again and again, even though he didn't quote the other ones, which was love God and love your neighbor.
Which to me just screams the value of humans.
Every human.
And we don't get to determine a human's value. So.
And I know there's people that were excluding folks from Bible camp. I don't think I'll just speak for myself. When I would see that person as the outsider, I wasn't excluding them like on purpose or thinking that I was loving them less or that they were, I don't know. I didn't see it as a degrading thing. I saw them as the problem.
Yeah.
Now, I'm pouring myself some more of this beverage here.
Like, I think I even saw it as loving to see them as the problem. Loving to them. Like, if they could only just
change
and be like this, they would live a happier, more fulfilling life or something like that. I mean, I just had ways to justify it to myself.
And now, even our perspective of God has shifted, and I think some of the Christians we grew up with might be like, oh, I knew this was coming. Like, they're selling out. Mm-hmm. Which is a fucking travesty, because this newer way, it turns out, I don't actually think is even new, but it's new to us, basically says that God, the way that we saw God before was that he was so weak that we had to do these things to fit into his code for him to love us. And that actually makes for a weaker God, I think. Mm-hmm. And God, I mean, these stories of him, like with Jesus telling these parables of like the sheep that was lost and God going out and leaving the 99 to go find the one and bring it back is a much more powerful God. It's a much more difficult thing to do as a parent, I think, to love all of the children. Any parent can draw a little circle and say, hey, whoever stays inside this, I'm going to love them and give them my stuff.
Yeah.
That's easy as a parent. Piece of cake. It's the most natural thing to do as a human, I think. It feels the safest. What feels really scandalous, I think, is when you start loving the outsider that's violating the code. And that's when everyone inside the circle will actually redefine how deep the love actually is and how powerful is this system of belief. If it's powerful enough for everyone to love everyone, that's powerful.
Yeah.
You got to talk for a little bit because I got to light my cigar again.
Yeah. No, that...
When you say yeah like 3 times, that doesn't count. That's talking.
Well, that hits home with me. And
Tell me more.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that in my own family. Like my family of origin, where love only went so deep. And, you know, as I have changed, as I was changing, they weren't able to accept that.
Well, first of all, sorry about that. I can tell you're having a moment here.
Thank you.
Second of all, I think there's a lesson to be learned here, which is just because people are different from us, we never know their motives. And it's really dangerous to assume we know them.
Yeah.
Like, I remember hearing about your sister, because your sister, like, left your parents' church when she was a teenager or something. Mm-hmm. And one of your family members said, oh, she was, like, really rebellious and really selfish. Well, when I talked to your sister, like, later on, she said, I left that church, and then I went to every other church in the entire Seattle area trying to find God.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, that's a different story than what I heard. I heard you were kind of like a rebellious, selfish, non-religious outsider. Mm-hmm. Come to find out, you just didn't fit in that brand because maybe God made you different. Yeah. And you went to go find it, and you were like labeled for it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I see this on our YouTube channel with our comments. Like, people make these funny comments, and it's so easy to assume their motive.
Yeah.
And I just don't think it's ever a good idea to assume people's motive. We just don't know.
Right.
And that's what's helpful about the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or any of these personality-driven things like 5 love languages, whatever. There's all different brands of it. But for me, what they all say is just that we're all made different, or we're all compositionally different. Like, we don't just, like, we're not all made of the exact same stuff in our personality. Mm-hmm. So if I assume that, for example, like, let's take the most classic one, the extrovert versus the introvert. I'm like, hey, let's go hang out. And you're like, well, I want to read a book. And I'm like, oh, you must not like me. You know, but you're just an introvert. And you're like, well, actually, I need more time alone. just that understanding that you're different is so helpful. But I think on a bigger level, you know, some kids would rather listen to music and they're going to connect with God more through smoking pot or not going to chapel or showing up late to things.
Mm-hmm.
And
or having sex with their boyfriend or girlfriend.
And while it can be in our best interest as parents to continue to teach them about cause and effect, I think we have to be open to the fact that we might be wrong and some of these codes are made up right now. They just fit our day and age. And we are always going to have to wrestle with that question of what do we do with a kid that doesn't fit in our box? Do we call them a black sheep? Do we call them rebellious or an outsider and label them? Or do we look at the box? Maybe change the box.
Tear down the box.
I need where'd our bomb go? There it is. That's it. I can't say anything more grand than that.
Yep.
Okay.
We got some comments, questions?
Yes.
Cool.
Let me find it here. First of all, I have our... Dang it. Is it the W? Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Hi guys, my name is Blake Roberts. I live in Dayton, Kentucky, so I'm actually pretty close to you guys. Something that I've been curious about, that you guys have kind of touched on in a sort of recent podcast was sex before marriage. I just want to hear your thoughts about it, and coming from a Christian background and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, people are usually pretty opinionated, and yeah, I just want to hear what you guys think or what you talk to your kids about or would recommend for them. I love the podcast, and hopefully you can give me an answer. Thank you.
Blake and Dayton. I got this one. This is simple. If you have sex before marriage, you're out.
You're out of the box. No, this is a really
easy.
Serious, this is a really
easy.
Serious
Got
question,
it. Next question.
Complicated question. Oh man. Yeah.
I actually don't know how you're going to answer this.
Okay.
I don't know how I'm going to answer it either.
I just feel really passionate about this because I've seen so many people hurt by this. So many people. And it's just like, is this even worth it? Is it worth the hurt? To tell someone that they absolutely should not have sex before marriage. I just have seen so many people hurt when they're told that. So it seems like there's a lot of people that don't fit in that box for whatever reason. And I think it's like saying a one shoe fits all kind of thing when you say, oh, God thinks that you shouldn't have sex before marriage. And if you do, then there's all these like threats, right? If you do, you're going to get something, or you're going to get a baby, or you're going to get your heart broken, or
something.
Your marriage, your future marriage is going to be horrible now, or whatever. So I guess the way I see it is it's kind of a personal decision that each person kind of needs to make for themselves. And for my own kids, I don't want them to go into it lightly, but I will not be telling them you shouldn't have sex before marriage. I won't. So.
I just did that.
Yeah. So that's, I don't know. I mean, I'm still like tossing and turning.
Would you encourage them to have sex before marriage?
It depends. I think it would depend on, like, if my kid doesn't even have a boy or girlfriend, for me to say that to them, like, but we've already encouraged them to be sexual, like, don't shut their sexuality down. Meaning, like, if they want to masturbate, like. So the next low, if you have a significant other, if they have one and they're not married, and they came to me and they're like, Mom, I really want to have sex. What do you think?
Why are you laughing?
I'm just like, now I'm like, oh shit, what would I say? I more just know what I won't say than what I will say. I mean, but I want it to be, whatever it is, like, I want it to be, I want them to see their sexuality as positive, not as negative. And I think when you put these rules around your sexuality, I'm sorry, but most people will just take it away from it that their sexuality is negative. There might be the exceptions to that, but I know that's what happened to me.
So we waited to have intercourse until we got married.
Yeah. And
why are you laughing again?
Oh, just because you said intercourse.
Intercourse.
Yeah, we did. And there was a lot.
Do you regret that? I kind of do a little bit.
Yeah, I regret my whole perspective around that.
Because it wasn't just a decision for intercourse. There was this motivation behind it that was this very strong emphasis on this code.
And I shouldn't say I don't think I regret it, because I don't like that word. I think for me, it's like I just feel sad for my past self.
So she said from a Christian perspective, and she was kind of indicating our Christian background.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that you don't believe in the Bible anymore? Or do you think that that's not in the Bible or some other thing? Like, how would you...
don't think it's very clear in, like, the Bible as far as, like, sex before marriage. I think if you want to find it, you'll find it. But I don't really think the Bible is for, like, finding that one verse to, like, support your cause.
I gotta say, I think we're on the same page, pretty much. All right.
Cool.
Next question.
Thank you.
Hi, Cami and Ben. I have a question for your question segment. I'm just wondering, from your experience with starting your blog and your podcast and your book and your adventures, etc., what advice do you have to someone who has like similar like big ideas, but really struggles with getting started? I would love to start my own podcast or blog or something like that, but it just feels like the market is saturated, and my ideas are probably already taken, or maybe they're similar to something that's already out there. So like, why would anyone care about what I have to contribute? And also just being worried about what people think, maybe they think it's like silly or something like that. Just wondering like how you get over that initial hurdle, and just like if you have any tips for starting and feeling confident in your new projects. Thanks. Bye.
I think you should take that one over. I'm going to light my cigar up again.
You kind of handled the premarital sex one.
Yeah.
It's only fair. Love this question. Love it. So, man, I'll tell you what's helped us with putting out product. And by the way, we're getting to a size now where I think people make the mistake of thinking that we don't deal with fear and we've always been big. This is not true. Before we started the AT, I think we might have had less than 10,000 subscribers, and we've been working on our channel for 3 fucking years. And our podcast now has 500 subscribers on YouTube. I mean, that's nothing. Like, some people shit out 500 subscribers in terms of a feeling of validation. Now, you guys aren't nothing. I'm not saying that to you.
Yeah.
But we're still small in a lot of ways. And either way, we still wrestle with these feelings of adequacy. Are we adding value to the world? Are we sounding stupid? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So the number one thing that has helped us get something started is to create a deadline and just ship it. Mm-hmm. You have to put it out in the world, and you have to do it consistently, regardless of feedback, regardless of
your feelings,
the voices in your head. And I mean, there's a lot I could say about this, but with our podcasts and our vlog, a lot of what we're doing, we had to just do it for ourselves. Like, maybe there are duplicate Ben and Camis out there that are saying the exact same thing we're saying. I don't care. We're not competing with them. A lot of why we're doing what we're doing is for ourselves, because we couldn't handle not doing it. And if you have this on your heart or your head or your mind, my guess is there for a reason. And what's going to really suck is if in 5 years you haven't done it. That's going to suck more than if you do it and someone else is doing it also. Like, the world's a big place. And I think it can handle 2 or 3 or 2,000 podcasts that are similar. Now, if you're doing it in your truest sense, my feeling is it actually won't be similar to anything else that's out there, because I think every person has a unique story and therefore has something unique to offer the world. Mm-hmm. So in terms of what to do, there's a few things that have been helpful for me. One is like, what are you passionate about? Like Gary V, is it Gary V? No, James Altucher phrased it this way. Like, what do you like? The first thing is it has to bleed. Like, you have to bleed it. Like, it has to be passion. It has to be from your soul. If you're struggling with that, another way to phrase it is what makes you angry in the world. Like, talk about that. And then it doesn't matter if it's duplicate, because it's real. And I think people crave reality, all different versions of it, and they're willing to listen to it. Now, you might suck at it, and it might...
Well, you probably will suck at it, because when you start something, you're never that good.
Yeah, and that's, like, completely okay.
Yeah.
But you still got to do it, because doing it in a shitty way, I think, is better than not doing it, because it's a step forward. And once again, that starts with a ship date. So you just got to know, if you look at our earlier vlogs, they are embarrassing to me that they even exist, in a way. But they're not, because they were the best we had and they got us to where we are. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way to get someplace, is by taking the first step. I still think our podcasts suck. Like, in terms of quality production experience. I think if you like them, and if you appreciate them, like, you are probably very gracious, and you're probably very open-minded and don't mind. You just like Cami and I, and I'm thankful for that. But I hope, like when I think about raising funds or really plugging like Patreon or something for getting sponsors or monetizing things, I think I'm going to pump out 100 podcast episodes before I even ask for that. Because these first 100, they're really just for us. They're for us to like develop confidence and find our voice, mm-hmm. and to get good at it, and to get practice, and to learn. I mean, we're learning about tech. We're learning about microphones. Last week was the first time I used a condenser on GarageBand, and my sound guy, music teacher for my kids, who's our sound guy. We don't actually have a sound guy.
Sounds so official.
He and the only reason why I had this appointment was because my son slept through his music lesson, because we have no rules. That was before he deleted his Fortnite account. But I said, hey, I want to learn like a trick for how to make a sound better. Do you know of any? And he said, yeah, turn these condensers on. That was episode 27 mm-hmm. of our podcast. We had to have 27 episodes for me to even learn about that. Mm-hmm. So,
but that's what pushed you to even learn about it. That's
mm-hmm.
the thing. Like, when you make these things and you ship these things, it's like a domino effect with all those learning things.
So 2 resources I will recommend. One is Gary V. Yeah. His Instagram account specifically mm-hmm. is highly inspirational to me to put out content. I hope you don't mind bad language. The second piece of content that has been highly influential to me is called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. It's a book you can get on Amazon for like $10. You can read it in about an hour, and I think it might blow your mind. But I don't know your name because you left on possibly one of the first messages, and actually this is like your 8th one, and I'm really thankful for that. But I really hope that you create something, and that you keep on doing it. Like, create a schedule and fucking ship it.
And expect to have a ton of resistance to it.
And expect one person to listen. And then, but your next one, like, either you'll get better at it and maybe 2 people will listen. And it doesn't matter. 2 people is enough. You know, there's no magic number that says 100 people.
And maybe this is something Gary Vee would say, but like, maybe I think what helps is having, like, telling someone about it. I guess you told us, but telling someone in your actual life.
Yes.
Like, I'm going to do this. Please ask me about it. Did you do it this week? Did you do it? Did you finally record your podcast?
We do this with our kids, and then I also have a group of guys that we meet Monday morning at 6 a.m. just to talk about our challenges and inspiration for the week and our project that we want to complete this next week. And we report back every week on how we do. There is an app called Anchor that we use to record our podcasts. It's a free app. You literally can record it on your phone. You need no extra equipment. You can talk into your phone for 10 minutes about any topic that you find interesting, and you can publish it to every fucking major platform in the world, like iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, with one button, all completely for free. That's your podcast.
That's crazy and
Go.
amazing that you can do that.
It's a crazy world. The only thing
world.
holding people back is you.
Yeah.
And I mean, now,
Which is-
granted,
which
I'm
is
not
a-
saying you're going to have a
which is
million
really
followers,
hard, yeah.
but in terms of getting your podcast published, the only thing holding you back is you. And that's a major thing. I don't want to make it sound like that's some minor
it's a
thing.
major thing.
But at the end of the day,
But it's
still
helpful
you.
because it's like, I think you have some control over that then.
Yeah. So kudos for even asking that question. That
Yeah.
tells me that there's something that's on your heart that you need to get out there.
You almost lit your paper on fire.
I know. Well, I'm trying to light my thing again, and I'm trying to move these pages. And, stuff is going crazy right now.
There. I'll move them for you. But yeah, seriously, that is a really good thing to talk about because this could transfer to so many different just passion projects, not just podcasting or vlogging. But really, I mean, we talked to our daughter, our 16-year-old daughter, Eden, because she's an artist, and so we just tell her, keep pumping out your art. So yeah, it could really just be anything that you're passionate about.
And the most important thing about this idea of saying yes to those quiet voices, these voices, by the way, are not rewarded in our society. What's rewarded is going to school, like to make your boss happy at school so that you can make your boss happy in real life and get a paycheck. And these things, you might not make money. I mean, we're not even making money from this. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not true. If you're in video land, you'll see we have this $23 here. This is the new edition. This is our tip jar that you guys have paid us for our new chairs.
We need to clap. How do you clap?
Well,
Or
we
we
already
already
clapped.
Okay.
And I
just
feel
wanted
like
to
they didn't
clap
do
again.
anything this last week.
Oh.
So if you just clap, it's like sending the wrong message, I think.
Okay.
That they can just sit on their asses, not do anything, and then get applause. You got to earn it, people.
Yeah.
I mean, you're special and all that, but I'm not clapping for nothing.
So there's no external reward for a lot of these passion projects, but I think there's an internal, like inward reward that you're creating something that is a part of who you are. And I think that's really valuable. And I think that'll actually be helpful to you.
Okay, one last resource I gotta plug. There's this video on YouTube, and it's called, just type in Ira Glass The Gap. IRA Glass. He's the host and creator of This American Life, the largest podcast in the world on NPR. And it's called The Gap. And this talk, it's 3 minutes long. I'm not going to give you any hints, except for it's motivating as hell. And it'll make you feel okay about your first 100 podcasts sucking.
Or vlogs.
Or vlogs, or
Or
blog
anything.
posts,
Yeah.
or whatever. businesses, doesn't matter. So I wish I knew what your name was, but I actually really want you to call in. I'm not going to remember, but you remember. In 6 months, call in and update us. It's March 27th. That means that's 3/27, 9/27. September 27th. Call in to 206-651-5744 and let us know what you've done or not done. I don't care what it is, but I want an update.
Yep. And everyone else, if you have a comment or a question, call
206-651-5744. Thanks, guys, for being open to this discussion about black sheep and all that kind of stuff. And our hope is that we would be able to build environments that are strong enough and robust enough that they include the people that we really do want to love.
They include everyone.
This podcast is available on iTunes and all those fancy places. And please call and leave us a message with your comments or questions. And we have a Facebook group discussion, which is available for deeper dives into these topics, and that all those links and all the resources I mentioned, if I remember, are available in the show notes. Thanks.
Thank you.
And goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Fight for Together. We'll see you next time.